Hi again, everyone, and welcome to By the Time We Get to Phoenix, Views from the Back Seat. I'm Brian Smith, and I'm joined today by my baby brother, Kyle. How you doing, Kyle?
Good, Brian. Thanks for having me today.
It's just rather apropos, but today happens to be Halloween. So Halloween night for this recording, 2023, which I think is very appropriate. We're going to be talking about our family growing up in the 1970s, which was an incredible time. And we have, tonight I have my baby brother, hoping to get my other brothers involved in this. My brother Jeff, Rick, Randy. We'll be talking a lot about our travels, the Smith family, and also my mother's family, the Butterman family, which is a great legacy there with both. So we're taking a trip down memory lane. And if you're wondering why we chose this title, well, everything was pretty much centered growing up on getting to the oasis that we know as Phoenix, Arizona. What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, I would say definitely from the decade of the 70s, that was Dad's quest. Ironically enough, yeah, he started making trips out there, I think about 68 or 69, and ended it in about 81. So there was the decade of Phoenix there in 1970.
Yep, he was very close to his brother Dallas. They were very close, a lot alike. Dad was almost named Houston, which would have been very appropriate for him. He didn't really like his name Lester, I don't think, although it's a very unique name. I kind of like that name. But it was almost Houston and Dallas, of course. That was his name. And Dallas was a great uncle. We had some great family members, but he really embraced us, and he took us on as his own kids, really. So that's going to be what we're going to be talking about this evening. The other brothers will be joining us later on down the road, but we're taking this journey, again, by the time we get to Phoenix, and it's views from the back seat. And I remember so many times when we would get ready to leave. It was a lot of times Mom and Dad had one of those big cars from the 1970s, Dad driving, Mom, of course, in the front, and the five of us in the back seat. You want to take anything from there, Kyle?
Well, and again, that was the setup. No matter what, they had their assigned seats. Dad almost always was the driver. Mom was the passenger, and at that time there was no navigation, so she handled directions and so on. So that dynamic was important to them, that it not be interrupted too. And that was the other thing. If 5 kids in a back seat that were expected to be seen but not heard.
Well, the other thing was, of course, it was 1973 when we first went as a family there. You were 2 years old.
Right.
Just turned 2. That's 50 years ago. So again, it's very appropriate that we begin our podcast talking about something on the 50th anniversary of that. I would have been 15, Jeff 13, I believe. Rick and Randy would have been about 11. So, but even at age 15, I was 6 foot tall plus, and I've heard stories from the other brothers how being cramped like we were in that back seat. Luckily, it was cars from the 70s and not a compact car or an economy car. That I could stretch my legs
it had a big back window.
Yeah, a big back window, which we'll talk about here in a moment, where you just got so tired of being up with us. You know, as we got close to the Phoenix, the temperatures also rose. And of course, Dad didn't leave for Phoenix in February or March. He would go in June, July, August. So the further west we went, the hotter it got. Did not have any air conditioning. Dad would put the window down. But it was very interesting to drive with Dad and Mom, because Dad didn't like the radio on.
No, he did not. Ever.
For whatever reason. Of course, 1973 was a different time. Great music from 1973. I remember a couple times we would say, Dad, can we please have the radio on? You can only look out the window so many miles. And he did play, and I remember a song by Elton John, Benny and the Jets, came on. And I also remember during that time, because it took us 3 days plus to get there, that the Watergate trial was going on at that time. And I remember ABC News broke in, and he did let us listen to some of the news. We didn't know what was going on at that time. We were teenagers. You were just a toddler, not even really a toddler. But that would go on. But Dad had some funny ways. I don't know what he focused on, but I will say this. All the trips we took, there wasn't anything close to him having a wreck or anything like that. There was some close calls that I'll talk about here in a moment. But getting to Phoenix and coming from Ohio, we thought that we were going into an oasis. We just felt like, wow, this is the heat and everything else. Back in 73, when we first went, Phoenix wasn't the town that it is now, the great city. It was about the size of Columbus, but with the nice weather would be the difference. So it was a great time. It was really the time of our life, really. But one thing that was a little bit interesting, I'd like to get your take on, is that Ma really expected us to drive those almost 3,000 miles or whatever it is from Columbus to Phoenix without saying anything and having no arguments. So
that's what I was saying. She expected all of us, me as a 2-year-old included, to be seen but not heard, and really not even hardly to be seen, because they had one goal in mind, and that was to get to the destination in the quickest amount of time possible. So they did not typically rent motel rooms.
Nope.
They didn't want to stop for any long periods of time. They didn't want to eat a lot. They believed in eating in the car and having their own food. Restaurants, especially back then, weren't that plentiful, but they didn't believe in buying from restaurants. So when we talk about a bare bones get to your destination trip, that was their modus operandi.
That's right. So the only time we really stopped was when Dad had to use the restroom, and a lot of times he was looking for a roadside rest, which were plentiful back then. And it was like the great escape. We could get out of the car, stretch our legs, which I'm surprised we didn't fall over and crack our heads open. And then back in the car, it was like the great race to see if we could get across the United States. But I love the big car that they got that had plenty of room. And, of course, the classic story is we were driving, and one time, and, of course, cars going by honking and waving and pointing in the back seat, and you were back there. It was so hot in the car, no air conditioning, that you just stripped off your diaper, and you're laying back there with this long blonde hair, I remember, because I didn't want your hair cut. I don't know if you remember that part, but you had very blondies, beautiful blonde hair, going to Phoenix, laying in the back seat like an Adonis, mooning everybody. Because back in the day, the back seats of those back windows were massive, not like they are now.
Exactly.
But one thing that was peculiar to me is, that I want to touch base on for just a moment, is we would find out we were leaving almost like we had like 12 hours notice just to get rid of all of our belongings, pack everything, and get out of there like we were Bonnie and Clyde or something.
That's what I've always said.
The Dillinger Gang.
It was like we were on the lam. And then Dad, when he drove, had that same attitude.
If there's a cop there, everybody get down. Like we're going to have Machine Gun Kelly, pump bullets into the car. But the classic story there is, for some reason, Mom put Dad in charge of making the decision to get a trailer from U-Haul or wherever it was from.
Right.
And he had two choices. He could get one that was open top or a closed top, and he probably saved $1 or something, or $2, and got a trailer that was open for a 2,000 plus mile trip. So I remember very well driving across the county, not even out of the county yet, and I look back and there is a paper trail of receipts, very confidential banknotes, all strewn all along the highway. I remember glasses flying off, breaking. We couldn't save everything, but Dad would stopped on the side of the road, and we're all out scrambling. I guess you were in the car. I mean, I could just imagine you getting out at 2 years old and, running across the highway because you wanted to be with us, and us picking everything up. For some reason, Dad didn't put into consideration that the wind would be blowing at 60 miles an hour.
And he didn't have anything covered. There wasn't a tarp or anything over it.
No, they probably used like a bread wrapper tie.
Whatever they could get their hands on. Because that's the other thing. They weren't going to splurge on having the right accommodations.
Well, I remember going back to that trailer, which was open, and it just being shredded. It looked like, it was just ripped to pieces. I mean, there was nothing there, so everything was just laid out. The other amazing thing is we were in such a hurry to leave that Dad left a just absolutely priceless, precious memories family album from 1963, where the photographer came to our house on Park Boulevard, a magical year, 63, Kennedy president, and they left that there. Baby pictures of Rick and Randy. Me and Jeff would have been about 4 and 6, not even 6 yet. I don't even hardly remember those pictures. Just left them there, and that was the end of that. Who knows what happened to them? You think somebody would have found those, which they did, and say, we got to find the family that owns it. Nope, didn't happen. They put them in a dumpster probably, which is extremely sad. I don't remember Dad having too much grief about that. He was not one to have any regrets about what he did or where he went.
Very true. And even on a later trip to Phoenix, on another occasion, he left his military uniform with all his awards and commendations and everything on it at another house.
At another
and again,
house.
You're right. Being raised during the Depression, he had no sentimental attachment to things. He just did not.
No, and another time he left all of his bowling trophies. He had a lot. He was in 3 and 4 leagues. He thought, being in 5 leagues was more important than making sure we had food on the table, apparently. But gave them all away. We will probably on the next podcast, and maybe, Jeff and I can touch base on this, just having a family history and talking about the dynamics in our family, which to me seems like some of the most unique people I've ever been around in my life. When they both passed away, I remember thinking, I will never, ever meet people like our parents. Never. I'll never come into contact with anybody ever who were like our parents were. The uniqueness and everything that goes with it. But I did want to take a couple moments while we have some time here. And again, you're listening to our podcast. By the time we get to Phoenix, views from the back seat, now it kind of makes sense what we're talking about. You and Mom took a trip to Graceland, and I just want to get that on tape for eternity. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, and just get your recollections of you and Mom taking a trip to Memphis, Tennessee, and Mom had to go to Graceland.
Yep. So it was really part of a bigger trip we were doing of the Southeast, basically. But one of the priorities was going to Elvis's house and witnessing his house and so on. So we had gotten into Memphis the day before, checked into our motel. It was about a block or so away from Graceland in that area. And we get up the next morning. Mom said, well, we probably should eat breakfast before we go because we're going to be there for a while. And she said, well, there's a McDonald's close. Let's just go to that. Which, if you knew our mom, she had a lot of digestive and dietary issues. I mean, not the least of which she was diabetic and she had some other intestinal issues and so on. So in those cases, most people would be careful what they ate, but our parents were also the type to throw caution to the wind relative to health concerns or dietary issues. So Mom wanted McDonald's, so she got McDonald's. We get done with our breakfast. We drive over to Graceland. We get out, buy our tickets. We line up. The first thing you do is you line up to go take the little bus that takes you from one side of the street where you buy the tickets and some of the attractions are to actually go over to the house itself, Graceland. So we get in line. We're standing there, and Mom's next to me. I'm kind of looking around, doing my own thing because I'm a teenager at this point. So I'm about 19 when this happens. And I hear Mom out of the corner of my eye there. I'm looking, I can see her, and I can hear her talking to someone that works for Graceland saying, "I'm not feeling too well." And that's how our mom would talk. That's how she sounded. And just so you know, Mom would love it that I'm still using her voice and doing that. So she'd get a kick out of this. But she said, he tells Grace, "I'm not feeling too well." But rather than just stay there, I thought, no, I'm not going to let this ruin my tour. She's not feeling well. That's her business. I'll just go on and we'll catch up with each other later. So I get on the bus, sit down. I look up. Mom's getting on. There's no seat next to me. Thank goodness. She sits down next to another person. And I kid you not, when that door closed, it wasn't much time. That bus reeked. It was the worst smell. And it wasn't just me that knew it. I mean, everybody in that bus. And it was the kind of seating arrangement where you could see everybody. So you're kind of sitting around on the outside. So you could look around, you could see everybody else's reaction.
Oh, boy.
And I'm not kidding you. People were literally almost gasping for air.
The terrible thing is, they won't have memories of seeing Elvis's home. They're going to have memories of this woman being sick on the bus. Oh, Mom just,
it was terrible.
just ruining the memory in the moment. I could just hear people later. Can you believe what happened?
Jeez,
traumatized.
We thought it was going to be a good trip. So we get off the bus. I act like I don't know Mom. And again, it's in hindsight, that wasn't the right way to be. But as a 19-year-old, it was different. So I get off the bus. She gets off at that point. Everybody realizes what's happened. And they must have ushered her off to someplace in Elvis's home.
Hopefully not handcuffs.
Well, yeah. So we start the tour, and I'm looking around. We get to the room, and I know Brian kind of knows the layout. We get to the room where we're seeing Elvis's various outfits from his concerts and so on. And one of the staff members comes up to me and says, "Are you the young man whose mom got sick?" And for a split second, I hesitated. I thought, well, what if I say no? What's going to happen? Because I didn't know, just like Brian said, I didn't know what was going to happen because she did some damage to that bus. So I didn't know where this was going to go.
It was unprecedented. Nobody knew what was going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, they had to have done something serious to clean that bus up because it was horrible. It was the worst smell I've ever smelled. I mean, so I thought about it. I thought, yeah, that's me. So they take me out of the tour. They take me to places in Graceland, Elvis's home, that I'm sure most people never get to see.
No.
And I end up where, again, it's somewhere in the backyard is how we got there, to what looked like an office type area with bathrooms that they weren't public.
It was probably Vernon's, office, which is historic.
It might well have been. It may well have been, because it was not anywhere near. I mean, the way we got there, the guy was practically holding on to me to guide me back to where we were going. I mean, I thought we could get arrested.
You said Mom even had that little accident on the carpeting. I could just see her.
She did.
Taking one of Elvis's scarves. Vernon's towels that were 60, 70 years old.
Yeah. Well, she was wiping it with something that said EP on it, so I don't know. It had a lightning bolt that said TCV.
Taking care of business in a flash.
Yeah, which she was.
A whole new spin on it. But
it gets worse though. They had to give her clothing. I had forgotten about that. I'm telling this before. because her clothing we threw it out. She threw it out there in the place. She left the clothing behind.
Mom's got one of Priscilla's dresses on, or Mrs. Presley. The funny thing is, people think that we're embellishing this. This really happened, folks. We're kind of watering it down a little bit.
Right. I swear it happened.
Oh,
so
my goodness.
Believe it or not, it gets better, though. We actually picked up the tour. We finished the tour. Mom is in these clothes.
It's now known as the Ellen Smith tour.
Well, I'm sure they did some changes to how that was run.
All kinds of protocol were broken and changed. Security. She probably caused people to get fired from their job. Housekeepers quit, walked out.
Well,
oh my goodness, what a story.
I still wonder where she got the clothing. And the worst part is she left the dirty stuff in there. I mean, it was horrible going in there. Even the guy that brought me back was kind of gagging. But yeah, to top it off, we jumped back in the tour like nothing happened. But I'll say this, and I mean it. The bus that we took back from the house was not the one we took over. It was a different bus.
Oh my goodness, that is incredible. Yeah. What a story.
Yeah.
Wow. Another story that I enjoy hearing, I want to get on record, is you and Mom, Dad, Grandma and Grandpa Smith trips to what we call the Hills, which is Southern Ohio, and a couple stories there.
Yep. So beginning about 1979, that's when we started. We started to take trips, and I say we, by that point it was just me at home. Even Rick and Randy, I guess, were kind of at home, but they really weren't. We didn't see much of them. So it was me, Mom, and Dad, and almost every Saturday during the summer months, so between roughly about May and September, almost every Saturday we would take a trip either to Columbus at first, to a smorgasbord there called Duff's, and I know exactly where it is. In fact, I've shown Brian and Jeff both where it was located. But we started to go to Columbus first, and then after about a year, we found out there was one in Newark, which for us made more sense to go that way because we have family that's from the Newark area. So we would take a trip to, as Brian said, the Hills, which meant we'd either go to Newark to go to the smorgasbord, or we would go to Zanesville and further south to visit with our family. So the Smith family and Grandma's family, who was the Geens, is who we met with there. And again, almost every Saturday, we'd get up at about 6 o'clock. We'd be to Grandma and Grandpa Smith's by 7. And we would take this trip to the Hills almost every Saturday and drive down there.
Yeah, Grandpa,
there were plenty of good stories.
Grandpa
one
never
in particular.
Talked. He never talked.
He didn't talk much, no. But if we found something he was interested in, he would talk. And two things that he was interested in: President Reagan and boxing.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, those were his two favorite topics.
Did not
and then
know
he would
that.
always buy lottery tickets. That was the other thing that was important to him on this trip. He always bought lottery tickets.
Wow.
But yeah, he talked about President Reagan and how the government was being run, and boxing. And that was a golden era for boxing.
Oh, big time. And in the back seat, Mom and Grandma Smith.
Yeah. So they were in the back seat. I tended to kind of migrate in the car between the front and the back, depending. But being in the back, it was literally nonstop talking. Mom could talk from the minute we picked up Grandma to the end. They literally never stopped talking. So it was kind of a division there. Grandma and Mom would be doing their own thing and talking, even when we get out of the car, and then there'd be Grandpa, me, and Dad in the front seat.
Completely silent, basically.
Yeah, yeah. Not a lot of talking. The other thing that Grandpa liked to point out or look at was if the oil wells were pumping. That was something that was important to him to notice.
Yep, it was.
So a lot of good stories, but one in particular stands out. And this is where we go down to Zanesville and beyond. Our family is from that area, and some of the properties down there, we don't own the property, but we own the mineral rights. So we're going down there to visit our relatives and see these places. So again, as Brian shared with a previous story, there was no radio on. There was maybe one window down. Dad did not like a lot of wind blowing into the car. Maybe just his window would be down. So it could get boring, especially if you've taken the same trip a bunch of times. So one time we're driving, I thought, I'm going to play a little joke on it. And I made a noise. I would go, ow. But I was able to manipulate it so it sounded like somebody was cutting wood.
Chainsaw.
A chainsaw. And they fell for it. Mom started off and said, what am I hearing there? Is that someone cutting wood? What is that? And it kind of took off from there. It's amazing to watch a story just build out of nothing, because then they're all looking to say, what is that? Sounds like somebody's cutting down trees over there. And of course that would set them all off. I can't believe they're doing that. They're destroying that land. And none of this is happening. It's just me going, and every one of them fell for it. And to this day, I don't think they knew that it was me, because I never told. But it was all around the car. And boy, they're destroying our land there. Boy, I can't believe they're doing that. Dad, can you believe? And this is our dad telling his dad, Dad, did you know this was going to be happening? No, I didn't. I didn't know this. They were doing this.
The other funny story, which I want to get on tape for our listeners who may not have heard it, is Dad in a brand new Buick, you said, which is a great car, decides to put the cruise control on, having never done it before. He waits until a packed car is driving down the highway in a winding road, a country road.
Yep, and this is, again, a true story. So a Buick, it was new to us. I mean, it was probably about 5 or 6 years old, but it was a really comfortable car, perfect for taking trips in. So obviously we get it. Sometime during the week, we plan to take a trip down to the hills that Saturday, and this was a trip that took us truly down to the hills, so Zanesville and beyond, where there aren't, you're off the interstate highways at that point, and so on. Some of these roads are literally dirt roads that we're traveling on, because this is where our family's from. So for whatever reason, like you said, Dad got the bright idea. He's never used cruise control, and anybody that knows cruise control, it's not intended for back roads, it's for interstate highways. So Dad sets it as we're going up and down and around all these curvy roads, and thinks he's clever with it, until we crest one hill that has a huge decline. And it probably, I would say, the grade is pretty significant grade, and it's a long road down, and Dad can't turn off the cruise control. He's I can't shut this off. I don't know what to do. So I'm in the middle. I look over. Our grandpa is holding onto the door handle as if he's going to open the door and jump out.
Oh my God.
I look in the back. Our grandma is holding on for dear life. She's not saying a word. But if you know our mom, this is not an opportunity she's going to let pass. She lays into Dad. I can't believe you did. How would you do this? Why would you not know how to turn it off when you turned it on?
Well, Dad would not wear tennis shoes. He wore the heaviest work boots.
Right.
And I'm sure that didn't help the situation at all.
Exactly. So somehow, some way, that he managed to turn it off just as we got to about the bottom of the hill. But with this car, not only was it stuck in cruise control, but it kept speeding up as we went down the hill. So we were going faster and faster. And I tell you, our grandpa was going to jump out, and our grandma looked petrified. And Mom was tearing into Dad, and he's, doing his classic, well, I don't know what to do.
I don't know what to do.
Right.
Yeah, Mom did not hold back. It didn't matter who was in the car or in the house or in the room. She was going to unleash fury on Dad. Poor Dad. We've got time for one more real story. Again, going back to Phoenix, you kind of jogged my memory a little bit. I remember when we were in Phoenix, Mom and Dad, of course, couldn't get a house, so they were able to purchase or rent probably a trailer in a trailer park, and it wasn't exactly high society. So I remember coming home from school one day. We were attending Alhambra High School, Jeff and I, and for some reason we had bought this junkyard dog who we couldn't control, and in a little tiny trailer, and Mom and Dad could barely feed us, let alone a dog. And Dad or somebody let the dog out, and it went next door, I believe, to a farmhouse right there, and killed all of this guy's prized chickens. Every one of them, killed them. And the dog got back in the house, blood all over its mouth. And the guy came to our door, knocking on the door, and I swear he had a shotgun in his hand.
Yeah.
And Dad went to the door. Mom probably did too, but he probably told her to get back. And he won the Academy Award that evening because or maybe the guy didn't believe it, but he was able to say, no, it's not our dog. We don't know what you're talking about, trying to hold the dog back with blood all over its face and a trail of blood right into the house. I think the guy even said, well, the trail leads to here. Hundreds of dollars on my chickens are gone. Got away with it. Somehow they got away with it. I was inside. I was terrified. Absolutely terrified. But,
a true story.
Absolutely true. I'd like to have some great memories to tell everybody about our trip to Phoenix, but that was not one of them.
Yeah.
Being in that small trailer. So hopefully we'll have more tales to tell. Even just living in that little trailer, Mom, Dad, a dog, and 5 boys just tearing up the place. I was 15.
The thing is, they always underestimated.
Every single time. And they expected us, I guess, to be little angels, and not going to happen. Absolutely not going to happen. I remember one time when they would leave us to our own devices. We'd get into fights. Horrible. You weren't really old enough to get involved, but we would have knockdown dragouts in that trailer. But I remember when we lived in Marion, I remember one time Jeff got mad at me, threw a shoe. I ducked, and the shoe went right through the wall. So we took a picture that was well above it and put it down like 4 feet, thinking we could fool Mom and Dad. And Mom comes home immediately and sees that, what's this picture doing here? Takes it off. Yeah. There's that massive hole in the wall. I don't know how they repaired it. But those are the kind of stories that we want to kind of reminisce and talk about. And again, we're really kind of watering it down, but all true, no exaggeration, no embellishment. So we want to try to stay on time. Anything else you want to say in conclusion, Kyle, before we end the show? I think
other than I would say, these are all, again, true stories. And know this too, if our mom were still here, she'd be laughing right along with us. In hindsight, she could always laugh at these stories. And that's one thing, I can recreate her voice, but I can't recreate her laugh.
No, or her presence. We just can't do it. She was quite the character. They both were. Looking back, you almost think it was magical, because that was really the last couple years that we were all together under one roof as a family before everything kind of changed. The 70s were an incredible time. The music, the cars, the experiences. It seemed like a better time for sports. And like you said, boxing was in its heyday. Baseball was great. Television, everything. So looking back, you almost would love to go back to that time. So we're going to conclude our podcast for today. I want to thank my brother Kyle. I'm hoping that my other brothers will join in. Even other family members would love to hear your takes and your reminiscences about this very unique family. We had a very common name, but a very uncommon way that we lived our lives. We're very proud of the fact that we had 2 parents who, at the time we didn't think they were that great, really, but they were wonderful people. Mom and Dad Smith raised 5 boys, all with college degrees. Never really got in any trouble except among ourselves. And it's memories that I cherish. I know you do too, Kyle. So we want to continue on that road. So for right now, we want to thank you for joining us. And you've been listening to by the time we get to Phoenix, views from the back seat. So again, thank you everyone for listening, and please join us for our next episode.